This conference will now be recorded.
So you're going to be like the first 20 minutes or so, Eric, and then Brian Ikeler comes in. Is that okay?
It'll be
Yeah.
20 minutes only if you guys have a lot of good questions. Let's see.
Well, what's the odds of that happening then? Gosh.
I don't know.
There you go.
It's like only if Pam's want to talk about something, right? Oh,
that's right. Did you get it? Did it make you presenter? Did you get it?
No, there's a button at the bottom that says share screen, but it's still grayed out.
Okay,
And it didn't pop up and say, do you want to share your screen?
Oh, here it is. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I got to left, right click it, and I say make presenter. And now
Yep.
you should be presenter.
Yes, you've been made the presenter. All right, so we're going to show this application. Gosh, I have a lot of stuff open. There it is.
Yep.
Okay.
About 4 or 5 more. One overarching theme is we want to help each other get better and develop at their job. So when I talk to the owners in STP and when I talk to you guys individually too, I think the one skill we want to develop across the board is our ability to have kind of high-level business discussions with clients that actually turn into opportunities for our company. And the one thing we want to try to do over and over again is figure out how can we be most helpful to you guys? Like what can we do that would actually help you impact you in your job and help you achieve your goals and all that. And the advice I keep coming back, I'm hearing back, at least from the owners, is to help my client account managers and my VCIOs actually be able to have business dialogues with our clients in a way that they feel like it's almost like peer-to-peer level conversation, and to then be able to translate that into, I think the terms we use most often is like a roadmap or a relationship kind of map going forward. So it's really a sense of you understanding what's going on in the client's business well enough so that we can then take that information and turn it into some kind of vision for how we and our client business are going to work together going forward. So it's the dialogue that we're really trying to get to. Is the better off you come up with a dialogue, the better results you're going to have at the back end. And so that's going to be a theme, a training thing that we're going to have both today and going forward in the future. And what I liked about, so we're going to have Eric cover the first part of that. And because he showed me an example of a business review that he did.
Michael, I lost you.
It's like he's frozen.
Too.
Yeah. See.
I'll give him a minute and then I'll execute a coup and start sharing.
Well,
It says
you got the screen.
I do have the screen. Okay, let me get started and let Michael finish his introduction afterwards. So everything Michael is saying is totally apropos, and we've been working on our business review process, as you all have too, I'm sure, for 5+ years. Michael, you're back. But you're muted. There you are.
Can you hear us? Okay, yeah.
Are you done with your fabulous introduction? Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, all right. So I was just saying, we've been working on this process for a while, and we call it the IT strategy review. We used to call it a quarterly business review, and I could never figure out, what that meant to the client. What business are they talking about? The business that we do with them, or their business, or our business. So we like to make it clear that we're here to do IT for you, and so this is an IT strategy review. And as Michael says, we've always made it very high level. We try to make it really worth the while of the CEO or the CFO to be there, and really that very first meeting that we have with a client, that person decides whether it's worth coming back. So we try to assure them that it's going to be impactful in that way. And traditionally, we've always had 3 things that we covered in these meetings. And those 3 things were strategy, roadmap and budget, which is really their projected, what we project them spending on IT, at least the items that we know about over the next 1, 3, 5 years. And then finally, how are things going with your IT systems? How are you doing at managing us? And how are we doing at managing your systems? So sort of those 3 aspects of performance. And we deliberately put performance at the end because it's too tempting to kind of wander off into technical detail that will turn off the C-level person. So we start really at the business discussion. And if that takes, half or 2/3 of the meeting, we don't complain, right? So that's that business discussion. We let them talk, right? And that's really when they're telling us what they're up to. Most recently, we've been looking to convert to not talking about everything in every meeting. So for years, we've covered all 3 of these sections in every meeting. And for years, our IT strategy reviews have been from 1.5 to 2 hours long, which is just too long. So Jay, I think, might be on this call, and he had kind of put me in mind of starting to focus on a little bit more of a cycle. So in this particular case, this client, we manage only their infrastructure. And so we said, look, we're going to talk briefly today about business and IT strategy, but we're going to talk in depth about security and budget because you guys are just finalizing your budget right now for next year. And there's a lot of security components in your budget. And that meant that we had just over an hour meeting, which is the first time we've ever been able to do that with this client. We like to lay out the goals of the engagement right up front and really say, our goal, and in this case, it was particularly good because they had a new person in the meeting. So they've been doing a lot of adding in their IT department. They have a new sort of middle level manager. There were 4 folks in this meeting, the CIO, his right-hand kind of operations manager, this new support manager, and actually 5 people, and no, 4.
Meeting?
Yes, and one of their tech folks is kind of their most senior tech. So they had 4 folks there, and one of them was brand new. And so, when that happens, we like to say, look, we're in the same boat together, right? So we have the same goal. You want everything to work perfectly, and so do we, because we're on the hook. And we don't want to get those calls in the middle of the night. If we do, we're there for you, and there's no charge for that work. But clearly, we're only gonna survive on this if we make everything work smoothly for you. And this is how we do it, right? So we do it through optimizing performance, a standard stack of technology, really selling the idea that they need to adopt the technology that we know and love and support. Cloud, of course, security is really risks of data theft and data loss. And if they have compliance issues, which not all our clients do, then we certainly hit compliance. Sometimes we take this out if they're not a compliance sensitive customer. Some clients really have none of that. By the way, we moved this recently from Word. We used to come in with a printed document and obviously do it in Word to PowerPoint at Michael's suggestion. And it just really shows so much better in a meeting like this, a remote meeting, than it did in Word. So if any of you are still, doing Word documents, totally encourage you to go to PowerPoint. Odd, but we used to have a lot of trouble getting these meetings scheduled. Less so now, but part of the reason that we don't is that we try to have them scheduled a year ahead. So it's kind of amusing, we say, are you guys free, in November of 2021? And people laugh, but, anyone going on a Caribbean cruise that they know about, or, that big golf vacation? And if not, great, we're going to send out right after this meeting, we're going to send out the Outlook invites, and we're first in your calendar. It doesn't mean that it doesn't get rescheduled, but at least we're in there. And what's new here is, again, we only have 2 of these really substantive IT strategy reviews with this client a year, and 2 what we call status updates. So the big topics, business and IT strategy and security and roadmap discussion, we've combined into those 2 more substantial meetings. Any questions so far before I'm kind of babbling on here? Let me get to the part that Michael cares about. So again, we break the meeting into 3 parts. This little green dot and this title page indicates that we're in the first part, which is really strategy. So as you all know, everything is COVID, COVID, COVID. But this was an opportunity for this client to tell us about their organizational growth, the way that they're adding new developers, new layers of middle management. The CIO has, been directing too many people, and clearly that has an impact on our work and our job. So they've put up a new facility recently, so he's sharing information about that. The go live on some aspects of that was delayed by COVID. Good news about this client is, and I had some conversation with him before this meeting, I didn't want too much of this conversation to happen in public necessarily. I wanted to feel out with him in advance of the meeting what he wanted to share with his staff, the folks who would be on the call with him. So I knew a little bit of this already, but the good news is that they're doing really well during COVID. At first, they were hammered. They had to close their manufacturing operation. It looked like a disaster. Now they're manufacturing their widgets just as fast as they possibly can. So they're running overtime. All our clients should be so fortunate for sure. So we asked them about this list as things that we know are going on. There's this new person on board. There's new organizational changes. What does this all mean in terms of your ongoing growth plan? You guys had projected 20% year-over-year growth. Are we still on board for that? How is that going to all affect 2021? The answer is, in this case, fortunately, not much. Things are, as I say, rolling with after-hours work. We have this new location. This is all stuff that we know about in advance and want to bring to the table, but ask them to talk about. And then, in this case, how are you doing at getting back in a new facility? So again, the goal, we tried not to forget this stuff in between meetings, right? So that we're coming in intelligent. If they drop anything along the way in the quarter, we have a file that we store that in, that we all kind of collectively, Tex and Sonia and myself, kind of dump stuff into. And when we're preparing the agenda for this, we try to remember not to forget anything they've told us, right? So we don't come in looking dumb. And we take what they tell us during these meetings. Sonia and I both take notes during the meeting, and she processes it, creates follow-up items, a little kind of follow-up calendar for them and for us, their homework and our homework, and sends it out right after the meeting. And as part of that, she updates this business reference. This is just stuff that we heard them tell us in past meetings that we don't want to lose track of. So we don't review this with them. We just say, hey, glance through this. If there's anything that's changed, let us know. Right. And by the way, we say this is so we don't forget what you've told us. We want to make sure that we're capturing what's going on.
I'm sorry, so go back my friend.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, productivity and efficiency and compliance and security, are those conversations you had previously, or is that leading into what we're going to talk about?
So, no, this is the whole, we don't have a long agenda. This is really the whole business agenda. And these 3 items are pretty standard for us, right? Like, how's your business doing? How's it going in terms of initiatives around new applications, around, almost everything involves IT. So if they say, well, we want to do barcoding in the warehouse, there's an IT component to that, right? There's a new ERP module that has to be implemented, whatever it is. So we want to know honestly, this might be the most important part of the IT discussion.
I was going to say, I think what you're saying is from previous business reviews, whatever you call them,
yeah,
you understood that this was going to be an upcoming issue in the current time frame you're talking about, correct?
Yes. And we also, we capture these little tidbits as the techs kind of discover things going along. Yeah. This is not a minor thing. I mean, they're moving to a completely new, they're upgrading from one ERP system to another. And these guys have, a couple hundred employees. This is a major project for them. It's huge. And they will talk about it all day long, which is great.
Yeah, I just want to add in here, Eric, not for this client maybe, but for most, I have a regular scheduled check-in where I'm not just touching base with the client with how things are going on now or any hot items, but I'm also collecting these tidbits of information to talk about in our next major meeting, which is the IT strategy review meeting.
Yeah, those have been really helpful. Anywhere from once a week to once every other month, depending on the client. Yeah. And typically not with the owner or CIO or CEO who's at this meeting, but more of a sort of operational contact that we have.
And
Yeah,
just out
that's
of
been
curiosity, and how long does this business review go time-wise, the whole thing?
So this one went an hour. I'm really pleased with that.
And then
Because
this part of the conversation was how much of the hour?
probably 2/3.
That's the point I wanted to
This
get.
this
So
page,
this was
this
the
page,
most, yeah,
yeah,
this
yeah,
page was, of the hour, this was 45 minutes?
yeah. I mean, counting the part before where we kind of introduced the agenda
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah,
That's the thing I want people to get, was that
Yeah.
this doesn't have to be a quick and dirty conversation. This is
Right.
actually a true dialogue, right?
And you're not in a rush to get through this part, honestly. That's why we put the other stuff at the end.
Yeah. That's the thing that people wanted to get. Was this if effectively was the business review, this and what we're going to go through in the next page?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll say, by the way, that Jay focuses on business strategy. Let's see, if we look back at our agenda here, I think Jay's on this meeting. He focuses on business strategy, IT strategy, and budget, but instead of security, I think he dedicates a meeting to training and how he can assist.
Yeah, so it's training. No, he has IT strategy. Well, he can answer. I'll answer for him.
Yeah.
So he has one on training. That's correct. But
Yeah.
he has one specifically on security.
Oh, he does too. Okay.
So it's IT strategy, then budget, then security, and training.
And we may juggle this around. It makes sense to combine business and IT strategy because they're closely dovetailed, but we try really hard not to clutter this business strategy section with stuff that only we care about, right?
Yep.
I mean, we really try to make it their business strategy, not the IT stuff that we want to talk about. And we finally achieved that by making those two separate sections.
I'm sorry, I have one other question. What is SIEM?
Security Information and Event Management. So this is kind of, there's a lot of stuff already in the can on the security side. This is kind of a new frontier. We've been doing it for about 2 years, but not all of our clients have it.
It's an expensive product.
It is.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So I should say, by the way, that we always start these meetings with, hey, what's on your mind? And sometimes that derails the whole conversation altogether.
Yeah.
But and if I know that there's something that's been going wrong at their site, and I know it's been affecting that CEO, I mean, they've been getting complaints about, internet outages or wireless that's not working well or whatever, often you have to address that head on right at the beginning. I know there's this issue about X, and we're going to discuss that when we get to the IT systems, or let's talk about it now, whatever that is. So often you have to clear the air. Fortunately, since Sonia's talking to these folks more regularly in the last couple of years than we had before, there's less of that. But you got to clear the air if you need to, and eat whatever crow you need to eat. I'll talk about IT strategy briefly. So these are the things that we want to talk about that they may have an interest in. And here we just said, look, you all keep thinking you need to replace your firewall. I'm not sure that you do. Here are the specs on your current firewall for your information. And they appreciate that, as part of their planning. Here, they had a major ransomware attack that, 6 servers were fully encrypted. Their business was completely shut down. Thankfully for them, it happened on a Friday evening. They could run through Saturday and Sunday while we restored these servers from backup. But it happened because of their terrible practices. They had like 14 users who were fully admin equivalent and used their admin logins to do all of their work every day, all day. They had two-factor authentication in place, but had bypassed it for some of these, important users. Just terrible. So this was our chance to kind of make sure that everybody agrees that none of that is okay, and they had already stopped doing it by the time of this meeting, but we're kind of reinforcing that point. So there's more more here than meets the eye, I think, is what I would say. And that's the thing, these aren't built randomly. These are built around things that we're talking about.
Okay.
So I will just very fast blow through the rest of these slides. Again, as we talk about IT stuff, and I don't know if you all can see this, those things kind of filter down into an IT reference, ultimately I'd like to make this a full strategy document for people. But this page is stuff that we've talked about that we've agreed is your strategy. It started really with agreeing about how often you need to replace stuff. So how old does a switch have to be before we replace it? How old is a firewall before we replace it? And then we get their agreement and then try to build that into the roadmap going forward. One little tidbit about the roadmap, this is not a beautiful thing, and I know it needs to be much more graphical, but what we've started to do is pull strategic stuff. We used to do just year by year, and we'd mix in everything, renewals and battery replacements and sort of, our services, stuff that's kind of meat and potatoes and part of the woodwork. Now we say, okay, we're going to talk just about strategic stuff, things that have an impact that you have to make a decision about, right? And that involve you. And so this is the estimated one-time costs and estimated recurring costs. These are all things that are essentially optional that they could do or not. Failover, moving this thing that runs on a workstation onto a server, redeploying some access points, improving their infrastructure. Same in 2021, and we break out the timing, Q1, Q4. That is really for us to make sure we're reminding them and getting quotes in front of them. And then we go all the way through for 5 years. We try to include all the big rocks here. If they have in-house servers, we want to go all the way through to the point at which they have to either replace their servers or move those functions to the cloud, whatever it might be. So we want that big rock, in this case it's in 2024, to be in there. And that's really about as far as you need to go, right? Sometimes it's only a few years, sometimes it's further. And then we have all the support stuff, which is what they pay us, and the maintenance and rules we now do in a separate section. And honestly, we'll just blow through this and say, this is all the meat and potatoes stuff. Feel free to glance through it afterwards. We send them a copy of the PowerPoint and PDF form, and here's all the stuff that we have on the books for you. Feel free. And then finally, and often we cram this part into 5 or 10 minutes. How are your IT systems doing? How are we doing? And how much effort are you guys taking to support? Well, given that ransomware thing, a lot. Please don't do that again. It's important. We also want to know, we also reward them for being good payers. I mean, we want to say, and most of our clients are excellent payers. These guys, at the beginning of COVID, sent out a letter saying we need an extra 75 days. They're done with that, fortunately, in this meeting. They said, oh no, our intent is to be fully on time with you guys. But I don't want to shy away from payment as part of their relationship with us. So again, this first thing is, how are we doing? And that's what this agenda is. Any issues, you get surveys regularly, but people are hesitant to answer those questions honestly. If there's anything really going on, let us know now. And we get feedback about specific technicians and such in these meetings. How are they doing managing us? Payment history, relationship. You'll notice here, we were really confused about how they approve work. And they would tell us verbally, but they never send an email. It wasn't clear if we needed a PO. They were frustrated that we weren't starting on stuff on time because we weren't sure they'd really approved it. So we use this as an opportunity to have that kind of relationship discussion, but formalizing things. Projects, if it says reference, it's probably been completed, which is great. And this is all stuff that we've done for them in the last 6 months. Pretty substantial amount of work. The beauty of these meetings, as you all know, is work just comes out of them, just falls out of these meetings, right? And then this is specifics about their infrastructure. And finally, we talk about security awareness training, which is something that they get from us. And we give them an example of a phishing email that succeeded, just something that kind of entertaining. The stats are here in terms of quantities, but this is a, kind of a real world example they can get their head around. And then, hey, here's our leadership team. Wow, I did take 20 minutes. I'm sorry, guys. Sure. Any questions at all before Ryan does his far more professional version of this thing?
Ryan doesn't even have a slide deck, so you're ahead of me. Good.
No, it's better to not use a slide deck, as Michael would say.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting to me, and actually Ryan could comment even without having seen this, is number one was the, like you said, 2/3 of the 2/3 of the meeting was a dialogue.
Right.
And there, it felt to me like as you went through everything else, you're picking off the important things to cover, not worrying about covering all the slides, right?
Right.
And then two, it seems to me that the things would confuse me slightly, so let me ask, was the things that you saw like the ERP installation and the security thing, is that reflected in the roadmap here in any way about what they need to do or do differently?
Yes and no. The ERP stuff, they're pretty much driving on their own. I mean, we've done some work for them around preparing servers and such, but they're using, high-powered consultants, or sweeping in and
Okay.
doing that for them. So we're providing infrastructure for it, but it's not a big deal for us from a budget point of view. The
What about-
security stuff, on the other hand, absolutely comes into the roadmap. So let's see, here it is, right? 2021, this is all specific security stuff that we had ballparks for each of these items to talk through the ones that they thought might be of most interest. We're not going to, they're not going to do all this in 2021, but our question to them is which ones of these are most important. And we actually spun off a meeting to Sonia and the new infrastructure management guy, support management guy, to talk these through in detail, because he's brand new, he doesn't know. So, a month from now, they're going to have this discussion. But absolutely, our goal is to tee up the importance of it in the strategy discussion, and then say, well, here's how the rubber meets the road.
One question which we, I know you and I talked about, was putting basically the roadmap on one page, right? So they don't have to go through, right? And then two is, what type of client is this? Like, what kind of business is it?
They're a manufacturing client.
And how big?
Sorry. They're a couple hundred employees, between 200 and 300.
It's a pretty significant company to have this kind of conversation with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In the past, we've met with their CFO, but since they hired a really genuinely capable CIO who came from a much larger company, it's been with him. But I don't feel bad about it. He's a very person.
My last question then is who is in the meeting from their side? At what level?
Yeah, so CIO, and then the former IT director, I think that's still his title actually, who works for the CIO. The CIO is pretty high level, strategically, and then this new head of support and their kind of head technical person.
Yep. That's good for me.
But
so
we won't do the meeting unless we get that top level person. The other folks, they can decide who comes.
Okay, so that's what I keyed on, and this is particularly the size of company and the sophistication of people you're talking about, is you're still able to have, you're still had like a 45-minute conversation on business dialogue and what they were doing and how that should affect what you work with too. So that's still kind of 3/4 to 1/4 thing is pretty impressive to me.
We love it. I mean, it's honestly the most fun part, if you think about it, of our job is learning about these other businesses. It's so cool. And I miss being able to walk around and have them show me this stuff.
Yeah.
But this is the next best thing.
All right, my friend, since Ryan,
thank you.
I'm going to unmake you present. I'm going to unmake you presenter, even though Ryan doesn't have slides, so your slides will go away. With that, Ryan, for those, can you introduce yourself to everybody who may not know who you are, my friend?
Yes, 1 second, I will do that.
You do not want you don't want to present anything, correct?
No, if you don't mind, if we can just stop sharing, and then if everyone, I mean, video the better, in my opinion. You want to fire it up.
All right, why? How do we get? Oh, you stop sharing. There you go.
Yeah, that's fine. So sure, Ryan Ikeler. I've had the distinct honor of working with Mr. Cummings here for I don't even know how many years now, Mike, probably 6 or 7, a long time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I knew Ryan when he was first got in the MSP business.
Yeah, never made an MSP sale. Yeah, I started with a really small MSP and then started working for one in Atlanta and now working for a firm in Chicago that a big chunk of our business is more on the security side. We work almost exclusively with the financial services industry. So, we have a lot of top line revenue and actually only about 45 accounts. But I've got 5 account managers on my team. We call them strategic account managers. They kind of take care of our A clients, and then client account managers are a layer below. They take care of our B and C clients. So Michael, I think the purpose of the conversation today was really just to kind of give people structure of, one, how we run our QBRs, you know, what the content is, how we really try to elevate to that partner business-like discussion, and how that ultimately translates into more sales. So,
I'm sorry, just one other quick thing, Ryan. Then, any advice you would have about what everybody should be asking about from the security profile for these clients as well?
Sure. So my first comment there would be, I think from a security perspective, now is not the time to be asking. Now is the time to be dictating. I mean that wholeheartedly. I think as MSPs, we need to transition to telling people what they need to do with security, not asking them what we think they should do. So I'll give a couple examples of how we've rolled some things out with that mindset. So I would start really around what I would say the contact strategy or contact compliance. And what I mean by that is, for our clients, it is mandatory that they show up to QBRs. So if they're not showing up, that literally is an issue that's raised to our leadership team, and we'll address it with the leadership of that customer. We do a lot of co-managed business, so we have a lot of like technical primary contacts like CIO, IT director, but then we want to make sure we always bridge up to the true C-suite so we can hold those folks accountable. So for most of our accounts, we have weekly operations calls. Those are really more tactical. That would be with those IT directors or CIOs really talking about the projects and things.
Yeah.
And then the quarterly business reviews, we have executive leadership present from our business. So it's not uncommon for myself to show up to a QBR, our president to show up to a QBR, anyone from our leadership, and we expect the same from them, right? So we kind of go through and once we close a deal on designating, here's our leadership contact there, here's our more tactical, everyone's got to come to the QBR. And that's really, there's 2 strategies of that. That's just creating accountability. Michael, do you have a question?
No, I was agreeing at how astute that was.
Yeah, so that's I would just say, like, be really bold in holding people accountable to that and letting them know you don't do business with people who don't meet with you, right? And you can say it nicer than that, but that's ultimately what we believe. So I'll kind of start at the QBR level. So we do the whole My IT process audit thing. We've got about 954 questions. We do annual audits, so we don't audit every quarter. We audit once a year. We fully utilize the software. So our QBR structures, we bring in a CIO-like person. They go through the audit. We actually have people approve changes right then and there on the meeting. All of our short term. So our roadmap is today, tomorrow, beyond. Today meaning something we're going to do this quarter. Tomorrow's this year. Beyond is 3 years. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with that method, but those are broken up into 2 categories. We call them MIRs, which are minimum infrastructure requirements. So that's particular to their hardware stack. MCR, minimum configuration requirement, is particular to how their stuff is configured. And everything we bring them is through the lens of making them more secure and making them more efficient. The account managers I work with, we do not commission, we bonus. I don't want them seen as salespeople. I want them seen as consultants, right? So those conversations are really business driven. We're trying to make you more efficient, or we're trying to protect you. The reason we bring executive presence is every year at the beginning of the year, we do like an annual kickoff with all of our clients, and we kind of just like go over the responsibilities that each of us are going to bring. So for us as their MSP and security provider, we're trying to be on the front lines with what we're proposing from a security perspective, making sure their infrastructure is up to date and all that fun stuff, and then making sure they're aligned to our configurations, right? And then obviously we're bringing them dashboarding and all those things. What we communicate very clearly to their C-suite, whoever that C-suite contact is, they're bringing the business perspective, the context to the conversation, because we're not there every day. We don't have it, right? So a lot of I don't have a QBR agenda in front of me. I could pull one, but probably it's a 90-minute meeting. Probably the first 35 minutes of it are just the president of our company talking to the president of their company, going, okay, like, talk to us. Like, what are you guys trying to do this year? What are your revenue goals? What are your business goals? Are we making any changes with the underlying applications? Are we doing any accounting software? We're capturing all of that and documenting it. We use software called Traction Tools. And then from that, we say, okay, here's the 3 or 4 things we're going to do this quarter to kind of help move you and propel you towards those things. For us, structurally, we include like project development. We don't include the actual project execution, right, for any of those business related goals. So, but if it comes to helping them vet different software solutions or anything like that, that's on us. But when it comes to implementation, like they're going to pay for that in a separate project. So if you look at like the 3 categories that we generate revenue from our accounts are going to be around the business discussions, they're going to be around minimum infrastructure requirements, and then sometimes minimum configuration requirements if it's like a significant material change that they're so backwards it's going to cost us, hundreds of hours to fix.
Can I ask you a question? The minimal configuration thing, is that security specific or is that across the board?
That's not, I mean, some of them are very security specific, but like for us, our top talker in all of our environments is Outlook. So a lot of that is like letting them know the configuration changes we're going to make in Outlook to try to lower the noise. But Michael, a lot of those things would come back to security. I think you're frozen. Right? That's a really good pose you're doing. Are you still there, Michael? All right. I think
this happened to me too, Ryan. Rock on.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. So I went really fast. Can I just pause for questions? And then we can go from there. Is there any questions? Eric, you want to ask a question?
Well, I was curious to hear from the group whether they have trouble getting their owners or executives to come. I mean, my company, I'm the CEO and owner of our company, and it does help a lot in having those owner-to-owner conversations. So I can attend those meetings, but I'm wondering if other people have trouble getting their owners or executives to come to the meetings.
Oh, you mean from their own MSP, like getting their
from
owner
the MSP side.
Yeah, and to be clear, we only do that for A clients. So those are anyone doing over $20,000 a month in recurring revenue with us. So we don't do that for every, because it doesn't, I mean, there's certain clients that just don't need that, right? But for our top clients, there's always executive representation. Chad, do you have a question?
Keep going.
Sorry, unmute. No. Okay. What'd you say, Mike? I don't know what's happening to Mike. That's okay.
I definitely want to hear the whole compensation for the client account managers as bonuses instead of commission intrigued me. I think it's, that's our philosophy. In other words, but it's not our practice and in our incentives. So that was interesting to hear. And I'd love to, probably not today, but Ryan, I'd love to kind of hear more about how you're structuring and managing that process at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I can
or maybe we can do a separate talk on that at some point.
I could just do 30 seconds on that, but I think MSPs have somewhat of a bad reputation. I mean, I don't know about you, but a lot of the new business we win, a lot of the pain points that I've heard over the years is it just seems like every time I talk to them, they propose something and it's not connected to like what we believe we're doing, right? So I'm super sensitive to that. Like if we're going to put a piece of paper in front of a client, it needs to fall into the category of we're going to make you more efficient, we're going to make you more secure, or we're aligned with whatever it is your company goal is, and this is going to help you move towards that direction, right? It's not, well, we did this scan and these things are all out of warranty and we want you to, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, we really try to be sensitive to how we speak about it. The other thing in terms of bonus structure is I look at like the sales component of an account manager is like a third of the job, right? Retention's a huge component of the job, right? Like making sure those clients are heard and we're keeping them. So what my department works collaboratively on their sales goal. So it's actually across all the account managers. So it's not on any one. And so that's like a third of their bonus component. The other is retention. The other is discretionary. So they basically, and it's different, like determined on level, but they have like an eligible bonus pool for the quarter. I will tell you probably 9 times out of 10, I'm paying out full bonus every quarter, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not, I try to be, if anything, more loose with it than tight with it. But that's just worked really well. I communicate that to the clients so that they understand that. And then Eric, to your comment about the owners showing up, I think we've struggled having the owners of the clients show up. And I think that is really setting clear expectations on why they need to be in the meeting. Like you are the bridge that allows us to elevate to the partner aspect. For all of you guys in this room, and this isn't like, don't take this offensively, but a lot of times we're not peer level to our primary contacts, right? Like account manager, CEO is not a peer level relationship. So your owner needs to back you up. They need to come provide that top level, like business context that they've learned from operating their company, right? And you're just sitting there and you're basically like the great orchestrator of all that and making sure you're keeping everything moving forward. So I think if you're having a struggle with your owner on that, have them talk to Michael. Because if it's larger clients, like that's where they should be spending their time. That's how you get referral relationships. That's how you get, you know what I mean? So that's really an important point there.
Ryan, can I ask you a question about that? Maybe percentage of total comp when you're talking about bonus and how you structure that?
Yeah. It's probably anywhere from 15 to 20% of total comp.
Okay. Yeah. Similar. It's always a good maybe litmus test to find out if we're way out or if we're kind of on track.
So can I ask a question about, you mentioned about security?
Sure.
It's no longer an option, but mandated. How do you start those conversations with clients that just are difficult to buy into that? Or
sure. So we have
money as an
IT strategy committee that meets weekly, and they basically come and they mandate what we started doing, and I was a big part of, is having them mandate what our clients must have from a security perspective. So like an easy example for us this year is we mandated this year that everyone move from traditional AV to CrowdStrike. And we did that through a partnership we have with East Entire. So it was not cheap, but what we did, so I've done the whole, let's go meet with everybody and let's tell them, like, if they sign up for this thing, like, we're going to give them a good deal and just like pray that they do it, right? So this year we decided, you know what, we're going to tell them, here's your prices, whether you like it or not, upon contract renewal, your cost is going up to cover the tool. If you buy it before your renewal, we'll give it to you at cost. If you don't, we're going to give it to you at this price. Does that make sense? So we basically, like, a lot of the conversations with and we only got pushback on probably like a half dozen accounts, but I would just tell them, like, we're not going to sleep without you having this tool deployed. So like, we're going to give it to you for free. You're welcome to not renew your contract if that's why you want to leave us in 6 or 7 months. But like, we really feel like this is the best thing for you. I think when people heard that we weren't using it as like a mechanism to like really make money, right? Like we were just like, we were really authentic and we think this should be in your environment. And we also did, like, we charged them $75 per endpoint deployment fee. So they were also getting hit with deployment, right? So we weren't losing money on the deployment. But that's been our stance with almost everything. We're about to do that with agent-based microsegmentation next year, because we think that's kind of the next big thing in the ransomware space. So our whole thing is every year we're going to pretty much, until we feel like we're comfortable, which we're getting close, but is just, here's the mandatory thing, right? And this is no different than when you're selling the whole package from the beginning, right? But I think if you as the owner or you are the account, like if we know they're vulnerable, I will tell you from doing a substantial amount of business in the breach remediation space, it's way worse for them to get breached for your reputation than to lose them over forcing them to do the right thing with security. And that's really how I would start posturing. Like, we're not okay with you not being okay, to the point that if you don't want to be okay with us, we're probably just not the best fit. And that's worked well for us.
So have you guys started addressing basic auth going away and moving toward MFA? Have you had that?
So Office 365 MFA is mandatory for all of our clients, but next year we'll probably make a push to move everyone to Okta.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're already all MFA.
Yes. Yeah. MFA. We literally sent email notice. You're going to get a project fee associated with this. We're turning it on. Yeah. Okay. So I don't think. I mean, the reality is, like, them getting breached is so much more expensive than them paying for MFA, and so much more expensive. It's a business risk for you as well as the MSP owner or as an employee of an MSP if one of your clients gets breached, right? So I think, you know, really looking at it that way is definitely the direction I would head.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Any other questions? Sorry, I feel like I went really fast, but I didn't want to run out of time.
Hey, Ryan, how do you train your senior, I think you call them senior account managers?
Mm-hmm.
Do they participate in the conversation, the dialogue that the owner and you have with the other C people, or are they kind of quiet?
Yeah, so honestly, Michael, depends on the person, like, and how many years experience they have. So that's something I'm always working towards. Like one of the things we track is escalations outside of our department, meaning like how often does an account manager have to pull like myself or the president in, just because that, I mean, as you all, like those are time consuming things when that happens. What I've really realized is like the makeup of my team, I have a couple right now who are totally capable of having that conversation. So we're really encouraging them to have it more, but still we show up, even if it's, and Mike, you've met Pam, but Pam, there's a few accounts like Pam would never miss ever. So she'll show up and just sit there quiet and watch the whole thing happen, right? So she's not always feeling the need to talk. So I think like, honestly, the key to elevating to being seen as a peer is, and this is like almost becoming so cliche, but it's really around the questions you ask, right?
Yeah.
So that's like, if you really want to like figure out how to grow and be seen as a peer to some of these like C-suites, then ask great questions. So I have a couple who are amazing at that. Like we're bringing in one right now, and I'm just like in my mind, I'm like, man, I'm never gonna get pulled into anything because she can like handle it, you know.
Ryan, how many account managers do you have?
5.
And is that split between senior and?
Yeah, so right now I have 3 senior and 2 cam. I shouldn't call them junior. Two cams. Yeah.
And your title with the company, just for reference, Ryan?
Vice president. So I oversee basically like on the EOS chart, I'm visionary for like new product offering and go-to-market strategies, and then I have sales, account management, and marketing beneath me.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Just a rough, not like specific, but what ballpark are you in for total annual revenue?
This year we'll probably get close to 13.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
And just out of curiosity, when you saw like a client account management person, or I guess a strategic account manager improve, like what was it that you did for them that helped them improve? Did you kind of throw them in the deep end?
No, we don't believe in that at all. So our training process for new account managers is probably 6 months. I mean, it's not fast, and I don't think it should be. We continually try to hire ahead of growth. So that's like, I get kind of the burden of being like, okay, we have a really good funnel for next quarter. Like I want to bring another one in. That's what we're like 1 ahead right now. But I think a lot of it, Mike, is just like teaching, honestly, back to the point about asking the right questions, is just like, we do a lot of like post QBR debrief and what did you think of this? What did you think of that? And you know, this is a struggle. Like I'm really trying to learn to shut up as a leader and go like, hey, Matt, this is your meeting to run. Like, I'll come in if I need to, but like, I'd love to see you try to really like facilitate this through to the end, right? So we just do, it's really collaborative. We have a daily meeting every morning with our account managers where we just kind of talk about what's going on. And then I really try to like, I have this girl, Emmeline, on the team who is like a phenomenal orchestrator and organizer. So I throw her into our like most complex, most moving parts accounts. She hates confrontation. So, you know, her struggle is if things ever do go sideways, you know, she doesn't want to go have that tough conversation. So we've got it collaborative enough where she'll just be like, hey, Matt, can you come with me? Right. And Matt will go there with her. So we try to like, I think most of our clients would know almost everyone on that team just because it's kind of like help each other out thing. And we're like super strict on QBRs. They're published to a calendar. Every week I get a report for QBRs scheduled versus held. So like everyone sees that and is in tune to that. And if anyone's out, it's not uncommon. Like we don't reschedule QBRs. So if Matt can't make it to a QBR because he's on PTO, Emmeline's going to do his QBR when he's out, which kind of keeps us like relatively diverse in terms of like account exposure.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing. I'm trying to run, because I used to be in a business where you used to have to develop consultants and all that stuff. And I actually was trying to remember back, like, how do you help somebody get good at being a business advisor? And part of it is you teach them how to, you can teach them certain things. You can teach them like what questions to ask and why those questions make sense. And then I think you got to bring a true sense of like business curiosity to it.
Yep.
Because for you guys on the phone, like Ryan was not always this golden tongued person, right? So he came out of the insurance industry and actually learned how to have these conversations simply by And you're much less, when you're in a sales situation, you're actually much less of a talker than you are in a presentation situation, right?
Yeah.
So part of it really is like when you say ask questions and listen, the kind of listen part gets de-emphasized. But it's actually
listen, and I would add, Mike, like listen and document.
listen,
right? So,
document, but then delve, right? So to me,
yes.
like a lot of it is literally just asking pretty basic questions, which is why is that important? How did you try to get it done? It was literally that next layer of questioning that doesn't have to be knowledge-based is the thing, the way to most quickly get to be a business advisor.
Yeah. And just being like really aware of your own strengths. Like Emmeline, although she doesn't like confrontation, I'd actually consider her probably my strongest player. Because it's very rarely that she ever gets in a situation where there's confrontation because she's like sees everything, right? So I'm totally happy with her being self-aware to say I don't like confrontation. I'm not trying to convince her to be good at that, right? I'm just saying like, hey, if you don't want to do it, like ask for help and we'll come up. But then when Matt, who is amazing at confrontation but needs to take Adderall, like when he gets himself into like a mess of 3 projects going on and not, like Emmeline will be like, Matt, let's just sit down and I'll help you organize this.
Yeah. So I think the things you said that are kind of sound right, but are really not, and it's actually kind of essential. So one is this thing about ask questions and listen, and then ask more questions, right? It kind of goes that way. And then the second thing you said, and I think it may be a misperception in most people's minds, is that when you're making a recommendation that they invest in something, it's not sales.
Right.
It's consulting, which is different, right? And consulting has to do with, understanding like their pain, right? Why do they need this thing and why does this solve the problem? And that's not sales, right? So as a CAM, I shouldn't be thinking I'm selling this to somebody. It should be I'm recommending that they solve their problem using this, right?
Yeah, it's really I'm getting this approved. Like that's the way I think of it. Like it's an approval process.
Yeah. So I think that's
and then the other thing, Mike, to the listening point, like you have to be aware of the financial state of your clients, right? Like to me, the most offensive thing we could do is go sit down and know, like we have a manufacturer that's being hammered by COVID right now, to go sit down with them because we have an audit report that says they need to do like a server refresh. We're not going to put that in front of them, right? We're going to say, hey, we understand the situation you're in right now. We actually threw this in the tomorrow category. So we'll talk about this beginning of next year. Like, let's get through the year, right? So it's also like really knowing like timing of when to put these things in front of them. And then, I mean, we're running on, for us, so if someone's paying us $100,000 a year, we're trying to do $30,000 a year in professional service numbers. So those are our ratios. So we just have one big giant pool of like on track, off track for all the account managers that we report on every week to see where we're at. I watch it on an individual basis, but they don't need to know that because I think for the most part,
well, again, you're not tracking that for sales purposes, right? You're actually tracking.
I'm tracking that for client health purposes. It's
exactly
like, are they, you know what I mean? Like if they're not spending with us, why? As long as we know the answer, then that's okay. But if we don't know the answer, then that's an issue.
Yeah, so like your advice, like if you were coaching all the people on the phone and telling them, or in this webinar, whatever you want to call it, you're saying like what you should, how do you push yourself to the next level, or how do you get to the next level?
All right, so I'll just give like one very practical example. So we're coming up on the new calendar year, right? So everyone's going to have their first QBR of the year. And if we do a good job, we're going to get that C-suite in the room who's going to kind of help communicate to us, right? And the opening question is, hey, talk to us about your business. What's going on this year? That's not hard, right? And then to Michael's point, like once they start talking, we want to keep them talking. So if they get excited about a category, keep going. If you don't, if you yourself can't document what they're saying, bring someone who can. Have them take all those notes, and then 3 days after that meeting, thank you so much for meeting. We just want to make sure we captured those business goals as you intended. Here's a copy of them. Can you please approve this? Right? Like people love hearing you write about what they said.
The more you talk, the smarter I am, actually, is the perception.
Yeah. So like that would be like a simple, like if you want to kind of elevate, like that'd be, we have a lot of structure around that. So like, in those annuals, we have someone there taking notes. Right. And then we're going to definitely send that back out. But that's really setting the stage for the year. And then it's pretty great. The next QBR, when you go in April, hey, we just want to revisit when we met in January, here's what you told us were the goals of the business. Do you feel like you as an organization are on track or off track with those goals? Is there anything we can do this quarter to help kind of push you towards them quicker? Like, I think that's what I want to hear if I'm a business owner, is like, you're not, at the end of the day, most QBRs, we like to sit there and talk all about us and like
Exactly right.
in our own lives. Like, if you're having a conversation and one person's talking all about them, it's probably not like a super impactful, meaningful conversation to you. So like, I think the same needs to be true in the QBRs. Like the tactical, here's your dashboard, here's how many tickets you had. Here, like that should be so fast, in my opinion, like boom, boom, boom. And if someone wants to dive in, fine, we can dive in. But the majority of those conversations should be centered around more of that, like high level, how's everything going? You know, what's next? How can we help type stuff?
And then I don't know what you do with your training and all that stuff, but would you think it'd be a good idea? So let's say security, right? Should you have a set of security questions that you ask in the QBR that makes them?
So I don't know what so Michael, we don't have, all of our questions come through what we do in our audits.
Okay.
So our CISO wrote a subset of questions that we audit on our clients every year, right? So like, if things fly off the audit and they're not in compliance, usually we would bring the CISO into the conversation and he would be really the ones driving the questions. So I would probably put that back on the owner and say, you should be coming to the table giving that security is one area where I would be offended if someone asked me a question I thought they should know if I'm sitting there. Oh, so what are you doing with your firewalls? Are they configured right? Like I might throw my hands up and be like, what are you doing, right? So I think the security aspect should really be coming to the table going, hey, here's what you're doing with security. Here's where we think you're lacking. We need to have a conversation about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know, Eric, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, Ryan, how much questioning you're able to do out of these audits. I think it's really, that's ultimately what we want to be doing as well, is saying, hey, what are your goals and how does that translate into what you need to do in order to achieve the efficiency and productivity that you want. And security is really just another thing that gets in the way of efficiency and productivity in a huge way, right? If you have a security failure, for those folks who are not interested in security, and someone brought it up, maybe it was Audrey, we get those folks who feel like, oh, I don't have a compliance requirement, therefore I don't have a security requirement. And really we try to keep wrapping those back around to efficiency and productivity, that your brand is going to be so damaged, your workplace is going to be so thrown into disruption. And there's so many great examples. I mean, our local hospital here just lost all their medical records for a month, or access to those medical records. People are opening their wallets and their hearts right now, but if they don't, you need to loop that back around. It isn't just compliance.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on the hour. In case there's any other questions, we got about a minute, and I'd like to thank both Eric and both
I have
Ryan.
one for both, I guess for both Ryan and Eric.
Okay.
And that is, how much do you share with the clients before the meeting? Do you prepare them with an agenda? How much do they know going into it about what's going to be discussed?
The only one we really, oh, sorry, Eric, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, first of all, and I assume, Ryan, that you do something similar. You mentioned dashboards and that kind of thing. So we have a packet of about a dozen files and graphs and charts that go with all this, which we never open. We send it to the client in advance, and we're trying to make sure it's 24 hours in advance. We're not always on point with that. and basically to say, hey, we're just showing you that we're doing your job. We're watching the store. The good news, though, is that if there's anything relevant in there, it's going to be in this narrative that we're going through today, right? We're doing the work for you, but we want you to have the raw information, and here it is. So we don't want to be that MSP that just thwacks a big bunch of automatically generated reports on your table and says, yeah, look, this is your IT strategy review. That's not our goal. But yes, we try. Is it Marty? My eyes aren't that good. To have things in people's hands 24 hours in advance, including the PowerPoint that I showed you.
Yep. So for us on the operations calls, so those are always the same day, same time. We usually prompt them to let us know. We have an issues list, so many of the accounts get a prompt to say, if there's anything you'd like to add to the issues list, please get it in the software, because the software uses co-managed. For the QBRs, the only one we really give warning to, because we're really tight on cadence, is the annual kickoff and just a note to the owner with expectations around what we want them to, owner or C-suite, what we want them to bring to the meeting in terms of the business perspective and the business goals. Our dashboards are interactive, so they're live for the client. So we just go to the URL and walk through it with them quickly. But most of them have been in there the day of, as they know that we're getting prepped for the QBR.
Hey, Ryan, got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
For your account managers, do they do mostly or entirely inside sales, or do they cross-sell over into both outside and inside?
100% inside.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then would you say that, or what percentage of your sales would you say is inside? Is it mostly inside, or is it a good portion outside as well?
Oh, you mean for new revenue?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and we're in rapid growth mode. So, I mean, to put it in perspective, the account so our account hit their targets every quarter this year to do 30% of MRR in terms of a sales number, right? But I have an outside sales team. So, I mean, we've year to date this year added 88,000 of new recurring revenue, and then another few $1 million in the breach remediation space we're doing right now. But I think we're healthy in terms of what we're doing inside sales.
Got it. And then just one more question. You mentioned that your team can fill in for each other when somebody's on PTO to do meetings. How do you keep the team kind of informed of the other customers, maybe not ones that they're taking point on? That way, when they do step in, they can speak into some specifics on that customer.
It's a really simple answer, but documentation. So IT Glue is our central documentation platform. It has the business's annual goals. It has the primary contacts. So and we talk a lot about we have a smaller group of customers, right? So we don't have 150 accounts, we have 45. So I just think 45 accounts divided between 4 people right now, soon to be 5. Everyone should kind of know a little bit about every account, if that makes sense. But I would say a lot of it would be if I had to jump into one tomorrow, I'd log into IT Glue, I'd look at what's discussed in the ops calls last week, I'd look at what we set in terms of the goals, I'd look at what we took on for the quarter, saying we're going to help propel, and I think I'd be able to just step right in. I would definitely make a phone call to the account manager to be like, hey, am I walking into a firing squad? Am I, give me the sense of where we're at. But I would say we're a little crazy on documentation. To me, it's how we prove we're doing things. So I like everything to be documented. I guess that'd probably be the simple answer.
Yeah, so it does sound like there's standards for every customer that you have documented specifically for the account management team.
Yeah, and for everyone to see too, right? So that's public facing to our internal company. So their team leads, the service desk guys, they can all look in there and see what we discussed in the QBR. Because we want everyone to know that, especially the team leads and the professional service guys who are then getting the projects, and when they're scoping, it's hey, look at that, please look at that. And it's not perfect. I mean, we started doing that 7 months ago. So if it was 8 months ago, I don't know if we'd be able to pull off swapping people. But now that we've gotten really good on documentation, I think we can.
Is there any customer facing aspect of the IT Glue infrastructure that you have, Ryan?
We haven't done the shared MyGlue thing yet. We've done that for a couple co-managed accounts, but it's not as a standard. We do the at any point people can ask for like their profile run book. So that's not uncommon for us to do the run book and say that's actually part of our onboarding procedure to like get the sign off on the IT Glue run book, just to make sure we captured everything they think we should have. But a great question. I think eventually we'll probably make it client facing. I don't personally like that we have so many different softwares right now. Like we have ServiceNow, IT Glue, Traction Tools. I'd love to get it all in one, but that would take some work.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any more questions? If not, I'm going to wrap this up and I'll get everybody a copy of the recording. And I want to thank both Eric and Ryan for joining us today. I thought it was a great conversation. And we'll take the advice we got here and figure out how we can help all of us, become better at business advice, become better business advisors, and how we can start to share tools like the ones Ryan was describing in particular.
Cool. Hey, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
I appreciate
everybody.
it.
See ya.
Bye. Hello. Mm-hmm. And it still went well, man. That's great. No, I'm kidding you. That's good. Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Mm-mm. Mm-hmm. All right. Mhm. What's that? That's from today's meeting, Connor? Mhm. 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 That's right. Mhm. Mm. So can the guy you met with, excuse me, the guy you met with sign the deal? He can, CAN? Okay. It's pain. Yeah. Just one other quick question, and he got to you guys, so was it inbound? He called you guys to set up the meeting? Okay. And that's what I was gonna say, and he got referred to you guys by the bank examiner before you contacted him? No. Yeah. Yeah. And did he mention the examiner to you, or did you find out about it and you brought it up? He brought it up. Okay. Those. And then one last question, just out of curiosity. In the time that is he not compliant with something right now? There we go. So I mean, the only reason he asked the questions is if there's a combination of factors that sound good, it's better than if we're trying to make ourselves believe that one thing is. So to me, you get 3 or 4 things. Yeah. I mean, that's his pain, honestly, is his non-compliance, right? Mm-hmm. Targeted. Mm-hmm. 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 Cool. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. 2021. Okay. Mhm. Mhm. No, I think I'm trying to, I wouldn't disagree with anything, actually. I think though, despite, in addition to the outcomes, we should give ourselves credit for coming a long way, actually. Sometimes it's, it's distant where we started, but you are far closer to being able to confidently go for the higher goal now than you would have been even 3 months ago or 5 months ago. Yeah. Because honestly, guy in Connor, when we started out, you didn't even have fucking, excuse my language. You didn't even have lists, right? I guess the other thing I would say too is I've become far more educated at the need to, in effect, what you need to do is have a surgical campaign for a city. I think that's unusual if I work with other people, but it's like, I think the critical mass that you got to achieve is actually at a city level, as opposed to just like randomly by industry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, the infrastructure was pretty bleak. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mhm. Mhm. Uh, And if I could add one thing where you're talking to, we also survived the fact that all the trade shows got canceled, right? Which last year was basically half of your MRR business, right, or third. Yeah. Mhm. Plus, and I think the other thing that Mhm. I think the other thing, Connor, that I would say too, just as you guys have coalesced as a team, and you weren't very teamy when I first started working with you. So I think that there's definitely improvement on the teaming side. We could always extend and improve it, but I'd say that's happening too. And I'm not dismissing the outcomes actually. What I'm saying is there's far more infrastructure and kind of foundation in place now that I would feel more confident with the 36, at least hitting the 36, if not the 48 number next year. No, no. I don't know. Let's say one last thing, kind of too, is the, well, I didn't mean to diminish your, actually strong end there, so I apologize. But the other, it's just been on my mind recently, which the other thing we got to realize is the buying model for MR changed pretty significantly in the past year. So I think the way people buy and how they're going to find stuff is we're on top of, in a way that we're going to ride the change as opposed to have to catch up to it. I think people buy much more through investigation before they actually accept meetings, right? And we got to figure out, like, and we figured out how to actually make trade shows work when they're not actually having meetings, So I think the other reason I'm optimistic just about STP in general, but you guys as well, is that we're kind of ahead of the wave in a sense rather than behind the wave. In a way, most MSPs aren't. Yeah. And execution. It's all execution. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have just one thing, Connor. In your 2,400 count for the state, did you include clients that would be the size to do co-managed as well, or were they excluded, would you say? What do you feel? Because I think the only other thing I'd say, I would think they're included too. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, cool. Because I just think one thing we might want to work on individually, collectively is what do we need different for co-managed? From a prospecting and actually even marketing perspective. Project management, CAM, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that'll all really start, by the way, it all starts in the prospecting process, by the way. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, actually, the original intent of my question was only does, if we got into co-managed, does it mean there's an additional X thousand number of addressable companies in the marketplace? It's probably, yeah. No, it feels, I would think so. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Jesus. Mhm. This is this is turning into like It's a Wonderful Life all of a sudden. Oh. Yeah, that's right. You too. See you later. Bye bye.